those needs and how your competitors are doing that so that you can prepare for what is the new future. That is the different way that we're able to help brands in this current state. And our focus is particularly on challenger brands, what we call challenger brands. And those are brands that are doing something new, right? So they're disrupting a category, or they're smaller brands that are trying to do something different for consumers. And these challenger brands are particularly challenged at this time. And
Hey everybody, Chris George here from SUBTA. Super excited today. We've got Brooke Dobson from Proquo. Brooke, say hi to everybody.
Hi everybody.
Brooke is with Proquo, and they have a very unique way that they look at data. And I thought it'd be super useful for the community to hear about what they're doing and some of the findings that they're seeing with brands in relation to what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. So Brooke, if you could real quick, please tell us a little bit about yourself and Proquo and some of the things that you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, so I am president of the Americas for Proquo AI. What we are doing is we have developed a brand management platform that is always on, meaning that every single day we're talking to people and understanding their feelings about your brand and your competitors against what's important to people in your category. And that's so important these days, right? Because needs of consumers are changing so rapidly. So having the ability to every day keep a tab on what the needs are of your target and how your brand is responding and delivering against those needs and how your competitors are doing that so that you can prepare for what is the new future. That is the different way that we're able to help brands in this current state. And our focus is particularly on challenger brands, what we call challenger brands. And those are brands that are doing something new, right? So they're disrupting a category, or they're smaller brands that are trying to do something different for consumers. And these challenger brands are particularly challenged at this time. And that's because their budgets are different and they don't have the access to the same types of things that the big brands do. So we're here particularly to help them, and we're in a unique position to do that in this period of time, just like you, Chris.
Yeah, and so, a lot of brands might be pulling data. A lot of times they're pulling data in regards to like the demographic, maybe income. And so you're looking at this in a different fashion.
Yeah.
I believe you said there's 16 different factors, right? But those are broken up into like 4 sort of main subcategories, maybe we would call them. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about those 4 subcategories, how they've affected, like what that effect is on certain brands. Maybe you can bring up some examples. And even if what you're seeing in relation to subscription brands versus maybe, other brands that you've worked with.
Yeah. So we have developed a specific framework that is the way that we measure the success of brands. And it's all based on the way that brands are building relationships with people. And that has been important for many years, that brands are building relationships, but it's even more important right now, right? Where people are really needing trust, and they're really needing that connection. We have 16 drivers in our framework that we evaluate brands against. And those 16 drivers, like you said, Chris, break down into 4 different groups. You have your emotional and your rational drivers of your seduction. So those are 2 different groups of drivers. Your seduction is about who your brand is. So it's where your proposition lies. Your emotional drivers of your brand seduction are essentially the image and the personality of your brand. Are you empathetic to people's needs? Are you aspirational? You also have rational drivers of your brand seduction or your brand's proposition. And those are more about the functional benefits that you're delivering to people.
And you're identifying this how? So through things you're seeing on social media, through...
No, we're actually talking to your customers. So if you're a brand on our platform, we're talking to your customers every single day about what's important to them in their category, and also then how you deliver against those 16 drivers, and for a couple of your competitors as well.
And so brands, this can be really tough for a lot of brands, right? They can't talk to them daily. I think that as a brand, it's super important to communicate with your community, through social posts. And of course you've got customer service, but you're able to talk to users and non-users, right? And to identify how they feel about your brand. If you're looking at things that a non-user may be saying, you can then start to adjust strategies, right?
That's right.
You can adjust items that maybe go in the box, or things that you may want to do coming in Q3, Q4, so that you can target some of these non-users. Is that right, as a whole? Right. So
exactly right.
I think what's unique about that is it's not about, okay, let's target 35-year-old males in New York that make $150,000 a year. Let's identify customers that we are identifying, like our brand, based on certain factors, whether it's empathy or whatever the case may be. So I think that's super important.
Yeah.
I think what's really cool, and I think this is what's important for everybody listening, is you've pulled a bunch of data on how people are feeling about brands during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Is that right?
That's right.
So I think what would be awesome is if you could tell us a little bit about those findings.
Yeah.
And tell us some things that you might be seeing that brands can do to make some adjustments during this tough time.
Yeah, absolutely. So because we have this brand management platform where we have brands always on and we're talking to people about these brands every single day, we were in a unique position where we already had more than 200 brands on our platform prior to COVID-19 even existing or being a thought, in the US and the UK, which is where we have our platform existing. So with the 200 or so brands that we had on the platform, we were able to look at what has changed in terms of consumers' needs and consumers' desires, and how are brands delivering against those needs, and which brands and which categories are doing the best right now. And that helps us to uncover and give direction to brands in terms of what you should be doing right now.
Sure.
So do you mind if I just share my screen, Chris?
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing. Let's look at the data.
Okay. So first, just high level. I'm just going to put this into presentation mode. Yeah. So first, just high level. I mentioned some of our 16 drivers that we have in our relationship IP, which is how we assess the strength of a brand and how you're delivering what people need. So what we have found across these more than 200 brands that have been on our platform is that across categories, the ones that are performing the best right now and the ones that are thriving are the ones that are generally delivering relatability to people. And that comes from 4 different drivers that we have within our 16. Relevance, which means that you're delivering actually relevant products right now. So if you think about your subscription boxes, what are the types of products that people need right now? That's probably changed a lot from what they needed when they were going into an office every day, right? Now they're working from home, they have their kids with them. So having empathy, that takes us to another driver, having empathy to knowing what your consumers, the situation they're in right now, and responding quickly to that. That means in terms of your messaging and in terms of where you're delivering that messaging to them in the places that they are right now, digitally and in real life, digitally more important now than ever. And differentiation, that you're giving people something different than the rest of the brands are. I mean, I think right now everyone is absolutely inundated with messaging from all of the brands that you're using and everything that you're interacting with to try to survive in this period of time, and having a message that's truly different and a product or service that's truly different is really important. And finally, connection, the ability of people to connect with how you're behaving. So if you're doing things right now that feels that you're reacting to the needs of consumers, people can relate to that better, and they can relate to what you're doing, and that helps them to connect with you.
Yeah.
So that's generally the overall, what brands need to do. What that means for brands like you, like any brands, is that right now in this period of time when you really need to be, I would say, quote unquote, hunker down, but I don't mean that you need to stop doing any types of marketing. In fact, you may even need to be ramping up some of your activities so that you're prepared. But what it does mean is that you need to be more cautious about what you're doing right now, right? Because every little thing that you're doing counts in terms of your budget, in terms of what you're communicating and what you're doing. So right now, you really need to make people feel that you understand them and focus on personalization, authenticity, genuineness in order for them to feel that empathy. But the interesting thing is that how is that going to change? How is that going to change in 3 months from now when the world is different and we have an even newer normal, right? So the always on ability of our platform to understand consumers' needs in real time every single day helps the brands on our platform to stay ahead of that and to be the first ones to be able to react to the new change.
So what's interesting though too is I think one thing that is a reality is that sometimes it'll be hard for certain brands to make a pivot like this, right? Yeah. So, you know, maybe like we talked about fashion. So brands that are into fashion and they're delivering e-commerce goods that are fashion goods, right? This is a short time period to make a change. That being said, they could maybe do some things in regards to content, to right, and video content with those brands. Right. That's going to allow them to build that community, show that empathy, right, and keep that close relationship. Yeah. And I think that what the data might show is those that are users that are maybe not into fashion now because they're stuck at home, we can start to make some adjustments and keep that relationship with the consumer. So I think that's great. You brought up another point, which I think is something we should really look at. And I don't know if you can pull the data up on it, but you talked about some strategies we wanted to even like double down on, right? So I believe you were showing me that non-user interest in Instagram or usership, right, is now going up, which like makes sense, right? So consumers are stuck at home. In a lot of, you know, unfortunately, in some cases, people are not working and everybody's got a phone, right? Like everybody's on this all day long. And so I think that they're starting to get more connected with this social distancing, and with social distancing comes Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat. And so we're actually seeing more users that are jumping onto these platforms, right?
That's right.
Which means that brands should be thinking about maybe doubling down on their ad spend because there's new potential customers. Why don't you show us real quickly some of the increase and what that looks like in a percentage of growth?
Yeah, so this is Instagram that we have on our platform. And right now what I'm showing you is Instagram's Proquo score. What the Proquo score is it represents the overall strength of the relationship that your brand is building with people. So the Proquo score is essentially a sum of those 16 drivers that we were talking about earlier, okay? So I'm looking specifically at the Proquo score for Instagram from the beginning of February until today. So until April 1st. And so that's the last 2 months. This spike of COVID cases in the US was February 24th. So that's when it hit 50. Oh. Yeah. So you can see right at that period of time, the sharp increase in Instagram. And the interesting thing is that this is among non-users. If you look at users, because we offer the ability in our platform to look at various segments, you can look at women, men, users, non-users, and younger and older age groups. Yep. And if you look at Instagram's users, I'm just going to load this up, completely flat. Yeah. So you can see the line is higher. Users have a stronger relationship with Instagram than their non-users do. Right. But the fact that it's non-users that are increasing, it shows us, and we've seen this across other digitally social brands.
Wait, but quick, what would, just for the audience, how would you identify non-users versus users?
So when we first put a brand on the platform, they help us to decide, how do we define who we want to talk to? So how do we define their category? So in the case of Instagram, it could be people who are using digital social platforms weekly. And then, so we ask people who are aware of your brand to evaluate your brand. And that's how you can look at the all segment. And that's how you look at the people who are aware of you. Your users are people who identify themselves as people who engage with Instagram on a, however
daily, hourly, whatever the case may be.
However frequent the brand wants to set.
So what you're seeing is non-usership, which are people that are not using it as much, are now going up. So they're using it more, right? Yeah. So, which is great. And so let me ask a question. This is like a hypothesis here. So I noticed that there's an increase, which looks like might be hitting February 14th, and then it drops. Is that because of Valentine's Day that increase happens there?
You know, that's a really great question. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but what we are allowing brands to do starting next week is to plot their events and the things that they're doing so that we can actually see the marketing events. And then we'll have also external data.
Is that the 14th, if you scroll over to it? Is that the 14th that there's a peak?
Right here is a peak at the 13th. So yeah, right at the 14th. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense. Maybe Instagram came out with like a filter, like a Valentine's Day filter or something of that nature. And so people were using it. Yeah. So that's interesting. So we're seeing usership going up. So that means people that are typically not using Instagram often are using it more, which means that brands that have a target demographic that use social platforms should look at potentially doubling down on ad spend.
Yeah.
Maybe revisiting demographics that they used to hit in the past that they may feel has dried up and re-hitting those ones because there might be more people in that funnel. I think that's super important. So for everybody listening, I think that you should be thinking about identifying with increasing ad spend. Usership with the social distancing is going to only increase. And I think that if you're seeing it on Instagram, would it be safe to say we're seeing it on Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok and that?
So yeah, here's another interesting example. And I can't give you because of confidentiality, I can't give you the names of these brands, but we have 2 digital photography brands on our platform. And one of them is community focused and another one is individually focused. You just kind of go on and use it yourself. Right. And that one, the one that's more individually focused, has actually declined in this period of time, whereas the one that's community focused has increased. Right. And it's been on things like empathy, so it is interesting. You see it happening. And so I think another thing, in addition to the ads and increasing your advertising potentially on Instagram, could also be thinking about ways that you can bring people together right now in a digital type of way in your communities and whatnot, because people are really yearning for that connection at this moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this is awesome information. And I think that brands should really be looking at this data. The more you know about the customer, the better, right? And so that allows you to make better marketing decisions. And I think looking at these 16 drivers that you've created, only going to allow you to better utilize your target market, right? And that allows you to potentially lower CAC levels, things of that nature. So I think this is amazing.
Here, just so that we could be as reactive as possible for brands right now, we quickly added a COVID-19 impact tracker to our platform. Awesome. So we're asking people how they feel about the ongoing coronavirus outbreak, and they're telling us in open-ended ways. So you can kind of look here and hover over the circles and you can see the specific feelings that they're having right now, what they're talking about. These are their verbatims that pop up whenever you hover over the bigger spots, which tell us like what are the big themes people are talking about. And then we also ask how the coronavirus outbreak has affected your particular category. And we insert the name of the particular category so that you're able to see in real time what people are saying about your category. And that helps you to then understand the changes that you're seeing in your drivers and in your Proquo score in relation to COVID-19.
Do you have a brand that you could show? Well, I know that Gentleman's Box is on there.
Yeah.
Do you have a brand that we can show the community on how our consumers are thinking about COVID-19 and Gentleman's Box?
Of course.
And that could give some examples to the audience here.
Yeah, of course.
What we're seeing and how we may be making adjustments in regards to that.
Yeah, so when you first come into your platform every day, and I think that the everyday summary is more important for brands these days because things are changing so often. So you see right away, what is your Proquo score? How has it changed recently? What are the biggest drivers that have changed for your brand? And then you can look at, of course, at your Proquo score. And I'm going to show you that really quickly for Gentleman's Box. I'm going to select the date range that I want to see. So again, I'm just going to go back to the beginning of February and look at the last 2 months. So Gentleman's Box, I'm going to actually plot you against your 2 competitors, has remained relatively stable among everybody. I'm going to look at your non-users because that's a really interesting story, I think, right now for brands, is that Gentleman's Box's non-users right around the period of time, I guess it was so let's look here what happened at COVID-19. You saw some of your competitors, SUBTA and Bespoke Post, doing something potentially reactive to COVID-19. They're both increasing among non-users. You're kind of on par right now with Bespoke Post, and SUBTA is now at this point below both of you guys. I think if you look at your 16 drivers, you can see some interesting things. I'm going to just look at clarity because Chris, you were telling me that in general, what you've seen commercially is that you've remained relatively steady through this, and your premium box is doing well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think we had come out with this health and fitness premium box for this quarter, something that actually planned 9 months ago, but the theme around it is like workouts at home and health and fitness. I think it was a unfortunate coincidence, but it's done well because it's something that relates to the consumer and getting something delivered to the house that they can use at home. And so we're seeing that that's doing really well.
Yeah, so that's why we saw. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, that's why we saw that your Proquo score, which is your relationship, has remained steady and that's consistent with what you're seeing commercially. Sure. What we have found when we're talking to people about Gentleman's Box, we're talking to your original box users and the users or the non-users of your premium box. And what we're seeing in general for your brand is that clarity has gone down since COVID-19, and clarity is about the purpose that you play in people's lives. And what we are seeing when we look at the open-end responses in the conversation, if you look at the COVID-19 impact, you can see people talking about fashion being affected. It's affected the root of men's fashion and lifestyle. Some people are saying it hasn't affected anything, but some people are saying that it has less. Okay, so they're saying it has made me wear clothes less overall.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were telling me about your premium box being more successful right now, you have different types of items in those boxes that aren't necessarily fashion focused, right? So that would be the reason that box is doing really well right now.
So that's super interesting. I think this is really good because this can allow us to think about for future boxes for Gentleman's Box, thinking about more lifestyle items, more items we can have at home, and maybe focus less on the fashion side. Because one, people's thoughts around fashion are declining, and we also don't know what the future holds with this. And maybe just in general, it just people get more excited about getting those types of items. So, Brooke, thanks so much for all this information, all your time. And I believe that your company is willing to donate a free analysis for brands.
We are.
To be able to have them have this done for their brand. It's something that you're contributing. So one, I think that's super amazing and super helpful. I think that, but I believe that there's some requirements, right? Because it doesn't work for all brands, whether they're maybe too big or too small. What are some of the requirements for somebody to really get good utilization of what you're able to give them for free?
The reason that we really wanted to partner with you in your Hope in Crisis initiative is because what you're trying to do is you're trying to help brands make the pivot that they need in this period of time, right? So you're trying to help retail brands with what is the future of retail, help them move to a subscription box if necessary. And what we're able to do is support brands in making that pivot by helping them do it more objectively. So they know how to do that because of what people need, right? And how other brands are reacting to it. So we're offering the free brand monitoring. It's 1 month of free brand monitoring. So everything that you saw that I just showed you, and it's for challenger brands. So how you would define challenger are small and medium-sized brands that are actively doing things with their brand. They're actively marketing, and the reason why that's important is because in order for our brand management platform to be useful, you need to follow the guidance that we're giving you, right? So we want to make sure that you're an active brand and that you're big enough that we can find people who are aware of you so that we can talk to people about your brand. So you generally have to have about 10% awareness, and we're able to do a quick incidence check for you if you want to apply for this. And we'll just run that incidence check and make sure that we can support your brand on our platform, ask you a couple of questions to make sure that you're really energized to do something with your brand and impact your future in this period of time. And then we're good to go.
So, hey, Brooke, for businesses that want to take advantage of this free offer and be able to look at their data like you've shown for Gentleman's Box and Instagram, where would they go to do that?
Yeah, so first, let me just draw attention to the link up here where they can go to actually apply for this, which is proquoai.com/challengers.
Perfect.
And if they want to reach me, they can reach me at Brooke, BROOKE, Dobson, DOBSON, at proquoai.com.
I think what's important too for everybody to know, this isn't Proquo's doing this for any sort of upsell. They reach out to us. They want to help the brands. They saw our Hope in Crisis video and got super inspired. And what they're doing is by no means cheap. There's revenue and costs on their side, but they want to help. and there's absolutely no obligation, and you're just looking to help these brands think about how they can pivot their brand and make better decisions for their company. So thank you so much, Brooke. Thank you so much to the Proquo team, and thank you so much for being onto the show today.
Yeah,
and look forward to seeing you guys at Sub Summit. And as you know, we've moved it to November. Super excited to see you there. I know you and the team will be there. All right, Brooke, amazing. Hope that was fun. I told this to everybody. I don't like to do my podcast where it's like scripted, because you just don't always know what's gonna pop. Like you might start a conversation about one thing and then like it just leads to something else that you didn't even plan for. So.